I woke up and I suddenly got it. I understood suddenly how thought was just an illusory thing, and how thought is responsible for, if not all, most of the suffering we experience. And then I suddenly felt like I was looking at these thoughts from another perspective, and I wondered, who is it that's aware that I'm thinking? And suddenly I was thrown into this expansive, amazing feeling of freedom from myself, from my problems. I saw that I was bigger than what I do. I was bigger than my body. I was everything and everyone. I was no longer a fragment of the universe. I was the universe.
Dr. Eben Alexander is an American neurosurgeon and author of the book Proof of Heaven. He became known for sharing his out-of-body experience during a serious illness in 2008. In his book, Dr. Alexander describes going into a coma caused by bacterial meningitis. During this experience, he claims to have exited his body and had a mystical and transcendental experience. He claims to have been catapulted into a realm of indescribable light, love, and beauty, where he interacted with spiritual entities. The term Dr. Alexander uses to describe his experience is NDE, or near-death experience. He believes that his NDE was tangible proof of the existence of a spiritual reality and the immortality of the soul. In the book, Dr. Alexander tries to integrate his NDE experience with his scientific knowledge as a neurosurgeon. He points out that because his cerebral cortex was severely damaged during his coma, the out-of-body experience cannot be explained by conventional scientific theories. This led Dr. Alexander to consider broader explanations, such as the existence of brain-independent consciousness. Now let's listen to his direct testimony on what he defines as heaven.
As a neurologist, how did you explain people who had near-death experiences, saw something, came back and talked about it? How did you, as a person not of faith, explain that?
I thought it was all hallucinations.
Okay.
I just said it's just a trick of the dying brain. That was kind of the language we used. Well, I would say during those years of agnosticism, I had defaulted to kind of a strong belief in materialism or physicalism, that only the physical world exists. And I can tell you, anyone interested in neuroscience realizes materialism has never remotely explained anything about the nature of consciousness. In fact, scientific materialism demands that you admit to having no free will at all, because they believe consciousness is just an epiphenomenon, a side effect of the chemical reactions and electron fluxes in the brain. And the truth is that is absolutely false. Consciousness is far more than that. There's evidence of non-local consciousness. Prayer and meditation can open the doors to a tremendous development of a relationship with that primordial mind, that primordial God force. And it's something we all share. It's the exact opposite of what materialist science predicts. You know, that your awareness will go down to zero as your brain snuffs out. In fact, the brain is a filter, it's a reducing valve that limits conscious awareness, so that what you actually experience is the opposite of that. It's where your consciousness expands. You reunite with higher souls, souls of departed loved ones, in this brilliant realm of beauty and joy and love, soaking, basking in that beautiful ocean of pure, unconditional love of God. And it's so unexpected and so shocking.
Yes.
I woke up about 4:30 in the morning with severe back pain, headache. My neurologic exam showed devastation. In fact, there's a medical case report by 3 doctors who were not involved in my care. But The reality is I just went deep into coma, and it was a severe case of E. coli bacterial meningitis, which is a real shocker because almost all cases of E. coli meningitis occur in newborns. It's very rare to encounter it beyond the age of 3 months. And then I deteriorated through that week on 3 powerful antibiotics. They'd had me on a ventilator from the get-go. And it was day 7, it was a Sunday morning, when they finally held a family conference saying it was time to stop the antibiotics and let me go.
So you have no brain activity.
My brain was shut down. There's something called the Glasgow Coma Scale that you use to measure coma. Anybody in this room would score a 15. That means they're doing great. If you're a corpse, you get a 3. Anything below 9 is deep coma. And for the vast majority of that week in coma, I was around a 6 or 7, sometimes as low as a 5. So I was in deep coma the whole time. They had CT and MRI scan data showing that all 8 lobes of my brain were affected. No part was spared. And that's why to have an extraordinarily rich experience, far more real than anything I'd ever experienced in my life, which is what happened in that near-death experience, completely violates everything I thought I knew about brain, mind, and
Because you need a conscious brain to experience.
But no, you don't. The brain is a filter. Its main function is actually to restrict consciousness down to this tiny little illusion of kind of self and non-self, all the stuff out there, and a here and now. But so much of that is really a fiction, and that's why centering prayer meditation can show us a much richer
So you
spiritual world.
You step over from this world into the next. What happened?
Well, for me, that journey began in a very primitive, coarse, unresponsive realm. It was like being in dirty jello. And I was there for a very long period of time. I'm sure I didn't have any kind of memory formation moment to moment. So it seemed to last forever. But the good news is it didn't. I was rescued by this slowly spinning, pure white light with fine silvery and golden tendrils. And as it came towards me, I realized it came with a perfect musical melody. And thus music, vibration, frequency become a tremendous theme for my journey. Because it's music. Not music heard with the ears, because in those realms, our awareness goes far beyond the limitations of physical eyes and ears and a physical brain.
In the dirty jello, were you afraid?
I was not. And one of the reasons was that, again, that amnesia. I had no knowledge of anything else. That was the only existence I'd ever known. I had absolutely no memories whatsoever of a life on this earth. Initially, I explained all that by saying, well, I know my neocortex was horribly damaged by this. We have all the medical evidence for that. And to me, I was still defaulting to my older beliefs that memories are stored in the neocortex. So the fact that all of that was damaged, to me, explained, okay, that's where that lack of memory came from. But of course, then there's the giant mystery of how is it over 2 months after my coma, everything came back. And in fact, the evidence for me is that memories came back more clear and complete than they had been before the coma.
Really?
It just shows us, and we discussed this in our 3rd book, Living in a Mindful Universe, how memories are not even stored in the brain. But that is such a nail in the coffin of materialist neuroscience that you don't hear it discussed very much. But the good news is that beautiful spinning white light opened up into a brilliant, ultra-real realm that I call the Gateway Valley. And that was filled with many Earth-like features. It was a world of perfection and ideals. There was no death or decay anywhere. Beautiful, lush plant life, flowers, buds on trees, blossoms, colors beyond the rainbow. I was a speck of awareness on a butterfly wing among millions of butterflies, looping and spiraling in vast formations above this Gateway Valley. And in that valley were thousands of beings dancing, lots of joy and merriment. And when I wrote it all up weeks later, I said these were souls. I knew there were souls between lives, and that there was this incredible joy and merriment going on. And it was all being fueled because up above were these swooping orbs, pure spiritual orbs of divine energy, these which I came to call angelic choirs when I had to put a label on them. But it was the anthems and chants and hymns that would thunder down from this beautiful chorus of angels above that was fueling this incredible festivity. Sparkling waterfalls into crystal blue pools, and all of this joy and merriment, children playing and dogs jumping, so incredible happiness.
Your senses are heightened and not contained and not
Correct.
confined.
got to remember, our brain and our eyes and ears, they give us a very kind of diluted down version of reality compared to that. There, it's like an ocean of this loving awareness. And for me, in that beautiful Gateway Valley realm, on the wing of that butterfly, my first awareness of the divine was a sense of a divine wind, or the breath of God, as I called it in some of my early writings, that blew through. And it was amazing because even though the elements of the scene stayed the same, all of a sudden I realized the incredible power of that divine force, of that causal force of an infinitely loving God, not a judging God, one of infinite love, of being home, of our spiritual essence, of the purity of our being, with comfort that really goes beyond any words.
So you felt comforted.
And that's why
you felt at peace.
Absolutely. And that is such a beautiful lesson that comes not just from my near-death experience, but from near-death experiences across all cultures, all nations, going back several thousand years. The stories are always of this beautiful peace, like we are home. This incredible joy and oneness, and that God force of pure, infinite love is so healing. The good news is you don't need a near-death experience to know this.